Welcome to the Psychology World podcast. I'm Connor Whiteley, bringing you psychology news, articles, and other interesting psychology-related articles. Where I can find the podcast notes and more interesting psychology-related things, and you can get your free 8 psychology book box set at connorwhiteley.net. Now let's get on to the show. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 126 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on why do people think psychology is a bad career choice? So we're returning to the idea of careers in psychology, and this is a really good, really interesting series of podcast episodes because, of course, we always tend to think that psychology careers are mainly to do with clinical psychology and counselling psychology. So it's actually really good to actually get a broader range and actually see what other career options are available to different psychology disciplines. But also, it's also good to take a step back and actually focus on careers in psychology as a whole. So this is a really good, interesting episode. And it is Saturday, the 5th of March 2022, as I record this. So moving on to the Psychology News section, we're going to be reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest. And the first one I think is just brilliant. So, the majority of psychology journal editors are male and based in the US. Journal editors are like science gatekeepers. They decide what gets published and what doesn't, affecting the careers of other academics and influencing the direction that a field takes. You will hope then that journals would do everything they can to establish a diverse editorial board, reflecting a variety of voices, experiences, and identities. So, a new study in Nature Neuroscience makes for disheartening reading. The team finds that the majority of editors in top psychology and neuroscience journals are male and based in the United States, a situation that may be amplifying existing gender inequalities in the field and influencing the kind of research that gets published. And to be honest, this is not a myth. This is not the researchers trying to make out that US men are bad. This is literally just the truth of the situation, because the reason why this is such a problem is because, as the article said, because you've only got one group of people who are deciding the direction of the travel for the future of a specific area of a researcher, which is a terrible. And to be honest, this is why the whole idea of gatekeepers is actually really bad though, because there's an argument for gatekeepers actually keeping out the bad research. That is absolutely rubbish, because of course I've been doing my psychology placement and I've been looking at the gamification of autism, and the research there is absolutely dire, and you cannot tell me that any editor thought this was good research. No, the editors probably thought this was interesting and really novel stuff, so let's publish it and let's get a reaction. Yeah, none of that is good research. So the whole argument for gatekeepers keep the integrity is just rubbish. And to be honest, I'm actually not going to get into it, but it's the exact same argument for book publishers as gatekeepers, and why they're absolutely rubbish in themselves. But to be honest, gatekeepers aren't good for anyone really. Yes, that's just something to think about. So the second one is, labelling something as a conspiracy theory does little to stop people from believing it. The label conspiracy theory is often slapped on unsubstantiated ideas, but does labelling something a conspiracy theory actually discredit it? A new paper in the British Journal of Psychology suggests not. Oh, Karen M. Douglas. Oh, okay. Yeah, but she's one of my professors. So Karen M. Douglas at the University of Kent and colleagues find that people call an idea that they already consider unbelievable a conspiracy theory, rather than being influenced by the term to disbelieve it. There's not too much to actually say about this particular article. Although, I guess from that, Karen Douglas is a great researcher. Yes, then most of the researchers are at the University of Kent. And how they're not sponsoring this episode. Yeah, but I know that Professor Douglas does do lots of great work on conspiracy theories. So if you are interested in that field, then definitely check out her work. But conspiracy theories definitely something that we need to tackle, and it is good though that we get more and more research exploring the different facets of it. Because to be honest, too many people are thoughts and are looking at the effective conspiracy theory in terms of discrediting it or discrediting an idea. Probably not. So it's always good to get a diverse range of opinions and research. Again, links are back to the first one. So the last one is, in on-again, off-again relationships, experience more psychological distress. Some romantic relationships that slot into place easily. We meet, we get together, and we stay together, at least for a while. Others are far more tumultuous. That's such a good word. As we break up and get back together over and over again, often to the frustration and annoyance of those we are confining. It's no surprise that such relationships can cause us distress. And this is the subject of a new study published in Family Relations. It looks at the impact of off-on relationships, finding not only short-term harm, but long-term implications too. And of course, because this is like relationships, and also because the article was like a bit short, there's actually not a great amount of that I can say, except for the fact that I know people who have been on again, off again relationships. I'm finding that such a tongue twister. And to be honest, it's just so weird and it's just so annoying because, of course, like you see the hurt that it does them, but then they just like go back to them. So very, very weird. And to be honest, the unofficial piece of advice would just be really just think about it before you go back into this. Okay, so that's enough psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So, moving on to psychology news section. This week has been, I would say, quite a strange week though, because of course, for two main reasons. So, the first one is that thankfully I've finally finished going through all of those papers as a part of the literature of the work that I'm doing as a part of my placement. Now I can't. Now because I finished that on Tuesday, I actually can't really remember too much of it. But I know that I've done some really effective writing on it, and because I'm doing that part of my coursework, as a book, you'll all will be able to see that my thoughts and my feelings, my opinions, but also what I've done during my placement late in the year, early next year. But then I also give readers some tips about how could this benefit them and how do placements benefit them as a whole though. So it's it's also part reflective, part helpful with practical guide for future placement students or current. Yeah, but that's coming out more next year. But the biggest tip that I have, and I know that I've mentioned to this before, please do your statistical tests before you do research, just to make sure that your just to make sure that your sample size has statistical power. 10 participants is not enough. Probably 40 participants isn't enough. Just please, just if you're going to do research, and most importantly, if you're going to make the claim that these results generalise to the entire population of whoever you're looking at, please just make sure you have enough participants to even make that plausible. 10 participants to apply to the entire autistic population across the world. No, it just does not work like that whatsoever. So, but that was very, very interesting. Then, of course, very quickly, I just want to say two things about what's currently happening in the world, especially with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So the first of all thing is that, first of all, I really do support the Ukrainian people. They are amazing. Because, of course, in case you've not been looking at it, the one image I really do remember is a group of Ukrainian people just sitting on the main road just to stop the Russian convoys getting further into the country. To me, that is just wow. Yeah, to be honest, I was just speechless because to me, I couldn't imagine me just sitting there for hours. So I really do find them quite But a slightly more practical tip, and the tip that I do recommend, is that you actually go through the backlist of the podcast, and this is especially true if you've been listening for a while, because it's something around episode 14. I mentioned, I did a podcast episode on what to do if you're watching the news constantly, or or something about that. And to be honest, I know this is a very distressing time and a very concerning time, especially with the Russians threatening nuclear stuff. So that is all very, very concerning. But please, the two things that are really helping me at the moment are it's focusing on how united the West is, because of course during World War One and Two, the West was nowhere near this united. But also just limit the time that you're watching the news, because what I'm doing is that I watch the news half an hour when I first get up. I watch it, or I check on it 4 hours later, when I have lunch. Then I watch it for another half an hour, in the evening, and then I quickly just check my phone up before I go to bed. To be honest, I would not recommend the phone thing. especially if you're prone to getting quite stressed about it. But to be honest, just make sure that you monitor your own mental health, and that's really important. And as always, I always love to hear your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So you can always email me, connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net. You can always tweet me on Twitter at sci-fi-whiteley, and you can always leave a comment down the show notes at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And today's episode has been sponsored by Clinical Psychology. But this great book is a really good sponsor for today's episode, because towards the end of the book, there's this really useful chapter on clinical psychology careers. So if you wanted to find out more about clinical psychology careers, then I definitely check out that book. And to be honest, it's really, really eye-opening, because clinical psychology careers expands over so many different, really quite diverse, really, really interesting areas. So I really do recommend it. And then that book will also help you get a really good foundational knowledge of what is clinical psychology. So I cannot recommend that great book enough. So that's Clinical Psychology, available from all ebook and audiobook retailers, and you can get the hardback and the paperback version from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. But if you didn't want to buy a book, but you're still willing to give the podcast a bit of one-time support, then please check out buymeacoffee.com/ConnorWhiteley. So let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So we're moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about why do people think psychology is a bad career choice. So in addition to all the misconceptions and the myths about psychology, a lot of lay people would believe that psychology is a very bad career choice for students. But why? So considering psychology is an extremely popular degree in the US and the UK, it is surprising to learn now that people think it is a bad idea to pursue for a career. And the interesting thing about this is that this popularity with the degrees actually leads to parents asking, quite rightly, their children of the university, what are you going to do with a psychology degree? Don't do psychology, it's useless. Now, I do understand these questions, because I am of the firm belief that people should only go to university to do a degree with with a job at the end of it. Now, please just let me explain that. Before you turn off the podcast. For example, any hard or social science degree is a great option because there are specific roles at the end of it, more or less. For example, a biology degree has a biologist job at the end of it, potentially. Whereas if you do an English literature degree, I really don't know, you could become an English teacher, a poet. I don't know. There is no career literature job that jumps to mind. And please do not email me or tweet me saying writer. Okay, also though, I quite like these science jobs because I cannot do them at all without a degree. So anyway, these questions from my parents are understandable. What options does a psychology degree offer? As I have and as I will continue to explore in future podcast episodes, there are plenty of career options with a psychology degree. However, as I've mentioned before, you need at least a master's degree to do anything within psychology, as well as less than half of the students that do a psychology bachelor's go on to do a master's and higher. Higher though. And I also just want to mention that if you go to connorwhiteley.net/podcast, find episode 136, and then if you scroll down to the bottom, where there's a really great link from the American Psychological Association about what can people with a bachelor's of psychology agree to. Because of course I've just said that you can't do anything with it by itself, but it turns out there are things that you can do. It's just slightly outside the realm of the realm of psychology, but a bachelor's is still very useful. Also, as shown in the Paths to Becoming a Psychotherapist episode, the most obvious career path with a psychology degree is to do with something in clinical and counselling psychology, since these are the two career paths that are most popular on TV and films. Nonetheless, there are other more specialised jobs in the broader psychology job market. For example, if you do the more applied psychology degrees like cognitive, social and biological psychology, you can become a researcher amongst other areas. And then there's also organisational psychology, psychology also known as a business psychology, and that I'm going to look at. It will probably be in like the next podcast episode that I actually like look at careers there, because that's, to be honest, that is the one thing this podcast has never covered, is business psychology, mainly because it is just not an area that interests me. But with organisational psychology, you could become a worker in human resources, business strategy, marketing, and many more places. Conclusion. Because the psychology job market is so large and there are so many opportunities for psychology degrees, this episode has literally just like scratched the surface of the topic. But if you're interested in learning more about careers in psychology, then definitely check out the other links of interest section on the blog post at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. Personally, I'm really pleased that there are so many different options for students in psychology, and at least we can all set the record straight about the so-called lack of opportunities with a psychology degree, which just makes me laugh. Because of course, like, we don't know whether there are like so many, but people outside psychology don't. And I should also say, though, whether I am really, really looking forward to future careers in psychology, where we get to focus on the more specialised areas of psychology and what jobs there are. Because, to be honest, what will most probably happen is that either you or me will be like doing the podcast, or like listening to it in like your case, and then like I'll be like reading like something else, and then to be honest, I feel like one of us will sort of go, wow, that sounds like an amazing job. Well, maybe I should like look into that for the future. So definitely really, really interesting stuff like coming up ahead. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope that you got something out of it. So if you know someone who would enjoy today's episode, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help us spread the word about the podcast. And definitely check out clinical psychology, especially if you want to learn more about clinical psychology careers. So that's available in all of the usual places. And if you found today's episode useful, but you didn't want to buy a book, then please check out buymeacoffee.com/ConnorWhiteley. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see the show notes, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. And if you want a free 8-book psychology box set, then please go to connorwhiteley.net. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.